notice of motion private business number 8, the Honourable T.A. Franks tonight.
Thank you, Mr Acting President. I move notice of motion private business number 8, standing in my name. Mr President, the Greens rise today in the chamber to bring attention to all of Council to the dire straits in which South Australian TAFE sector finds itself. Across the nation, the Greens have also pushed for a well-funded and resourced public TAFE sector, both at federal, state and territory levels. This motion that I'm moving today has actually been put by Greens members of Parliament in each Parliament where we have a member. It is to highlight and stand in solidarity with our colleagues who today mark National TAFE Day. It also is to highlight the importance of a strong and vibrant public TAFE sector. We take this opportunity to highlight major and pressing issues facing TAFE in South Australia. In particular, we highlight that since the passage of the TAFE bills in 2012, we've seen a degradation of what used to be a robust and publicly owned TAFE system. This motion highlights that the proposed funding cuts to the TAFE budget in South Australia will have a disastrous impact on students and staff, and indeed on TAFE's ability to deliver quality education and vocational studies. To illustrate just how the funding has dramatically decreased for TAFE in South Australia, I will refer to the figures obtained by my office from the Australian Government's Productivity Commission. The most recent figures available are 2012 figures, which clearly show that South Australia's TAFE funding is the poorest in the nation. According to these figures, the payment to non-TAFE providers of vocational education in South Australia rose from $50.9 million in 2011 to $81 million in 2012. These figures show the increase in the non-TAFE providers' share as a percentage of government recurrent funding from 7.2% in 2008 to 24.5% in 2012. That's a 17.3% rise in funding for contestability available to private RTOs. I particularly want to draw this chamber's attention to increased payments to non-TAFE providers from 24.5% in 2012 compared to 13.6% in 2011. That's a rapid 10.9% increase in contestability funding within just 12 months. The 2011-12 increase in non-TAFE providers' funding is quite significant, and indeed it confirms the decline of TAFE funding in South Australia. Comparatively, Victoria has had a consistent 10% increase in contestability funding. This trend is consistent because Victoria introduced aggressive TAFE reform laws in 2008. South Australia is now the second state in the country to aggressively increase its non-TAFE vocational education providers' funding. The 2014 report on government services indicates that payments to non-TAFE providers increased by 20.6% nationally in 2012, but by 58.9% in Victoria and 59.1% in South Australia. What this means for per annual hour of TAFE funding in South Australia is the sharpest and most dramatic decline in funding from 2011 to 2012. Here in South Australia, we've dropped by 25% and by a massive 45% between 2003 and 2012. This takes South Australia per annual hour funding in 2012 at $10.57 to well below the national average of $12.62. Mr President, Mr Acting President, what these figures indicate is an attack on TAFE funding, an attack on students' opportunities, and indeed the shameless corporatisation of the vocational education sector in South Australia. I'd like to read out a statement made by the then Minister when we were debating the TAFE bill here in this chamber in 2012. The then Minister representing the Minister for Higher Education, Minister Wortley, stated the following: "The state government is committed to recognising the importance of TAFE SA as the state's largest provider of publicly funded training within this context. TAFE SA will continue to play an important role in the new demand-driven VET system by meeting industry training and community service needs and contributing to the social and economic development of regional communities." It's interesting to see that the government pointed out how TAFE would contribute to that social and economic development of regional communities. I say interesting because on one hand the government has praised TAFE for contributing to the social and economic development of those communities, and yet we have seen the closure of a number of programs in TAFE campuses throughout regional communities in South Australia. This has impacted on the viability of those campuses to remain open into the future. The closing down of TAFE campuses has a particularly adverse impact on people in regional and rural parts of our state. The following TAFE campuses and courses have closed since the contestability model was introduced. Croydon campus will close in July as staff move to Regency. This was part of the 4 campuses closing for the Tonsley TAFE and upgrade of the Regency TAFE campus. Roseworthy TAFE campus was to close on the 30th of June 2014, but will now remain open until the end of this year. The Renaissance Centre ELS program was to relocate to the Adelaide campus, resulting in the end of the centre's use. However, this has been put on hold as a result of the finance of remodelling that Adelaide campus. I understand there are rumours, very strong rumours, that the Erdbray Agricultural High School may be moving from that area, and I certainly would urge the government to respond to that when they reply to this motion. At present, many programs are being cut or relocated, resulting in a reduction in staff and face-to-face teaching. This is following a push also to further increases to online models of course delivery. When debating the TAFE bills in 2012, the then Minister spoke highly of supporting vocational training in regional and rural areas of our state, and yet, of course, courses have been cancelled at the Port Lincoln campus. The Port Lincoln TAFE management closed the Port Lincoln Training Guarantee for Safe Automotive class at the end of June, and I would like to read out what one of the staff from Port Lincoln has said. Resultant impact on local employers due to disruption of apprentice administrative and training processes. Significant delays in start dates of apprentice training due to uncertainty of classes becoming available at the Port Lincoln campus. Employers and Australian apprenticeships centres angry with service given by TAFE SA as a result. Naracoorte campus has also had its hairdressing course cancelled. Parents and students expressed their anger on local ABC radio, and indeed were most concerned about the lack of consultation provided. One interview with a Robin Verrill of Naracoorte, who was a TAFE student, about the hair and beauty students' situation at Naracoorte TAFE, those students having just been told their course was closing, saw Ms Verrill say that she's 2 years into that hair and beauty course and she won't be able to finish it at Naracoorte. She said it will be a 6-hour trip to TAFE in Mount Gambier, and at least 10 students will be affected. She also told the radio that she's been told it's been closed because it's no longer considered financially viable. Ms Verrill said that local hairdressers and beauticians work as teachers for the course, and indeed that's going to have a flow-on effect for that local community, not just for the students, of course for the staff, and indeed for the community and the services available within that community itself. There are rumours coming from the staff at Naracoorte campus that there will be 25 regional campuses closed in the near future, including, indeed, Naracoorte campus. An article from the print media in Riverland states, the TAFE SA Riverland branches have seen 7 staff jobs cut, including 4 full-time and 3 part-time jobs at Berry and Renmark campuses. The staff were offered TVSPs, and TAFE SA's Business Development and Regions Executive Director, Cathy Brown, responded, and I quote, "The changes which come just over 12 months after TAFE announced it would merge its regional and city offices in Adelaide would create no loss of service to students." The music program at Noarlunga, which provided courses of composition, music business principles, and indeed provided experience in performing on the job venues, has also been hit. TAFE is about hands-on experience and delivering training and experience to meet industry needs. Noarlunga TAFE campus met those expectations and had indeed outstanding and emerging musicians and music business professionals. However, this campus has also now been closed. When TAFE campuses are closed down and scrapped, so are opportunities not just for the students in those communities, but opportunities and development within those communities and across those communities. With the closure of music programs at Noarlunga, all the the building and construction programs have been moved to Tonsley, and this has left vacant workshops at Noarlunga. Graphic design has been moved to Tea Tree Gully, and the women's education program was responded to in this place by the current minister, appears to be in limbo after early reports that indeed it was also for the CHOP. At Mount Gambier,
I can't hear the one I'm just trying to
The Honourable Mr Vincent had a good point. I've been keeping an eye on a couple of conversations in this chamber. I think the Honourable Ms Franks deserves the opportunity to speak without competing with other conversations. I call the Honourable Ms Franks.
thank you. At the Mount Gambier TAFE, the graphic design program has indeed been cut. At Tea Tree Gully campus, the enforcement of new budget cuts has resulted in the beauty courses not having been listed in the SATAC guide for semester 2. That means only fee-for-services courses will be on offer at Tea Tree Gully. My office has been informed that these continuing students and any new potential students studying under this funding arrangement will have to be transferred to the Adelaide campus. There will be staff cuts at the Tea Tree Gully campus as student numbers diminish, resulting in part-time instruction, contract staff and then indeed probably packages offered to those permanent staff. It's clear from this evidence that the TAFE sector has been under enormous pressure following policy decisions that this Labor government introduced to what they termed open up government funding to competition from private providers. Major and continuing cuts in government funding to the TAFE sector, coupled with the diversion of substantial public funding from TAFE to private for-profit RTOs under the contestability model, has resulted in a funding crisis for TAFE institutions in our state, with major losses of staff, resources and infrastructure. This contestability model has diminished the TAFE sector's capacity to provide supported, affordable and quality vocational training and further education, not just to those students, but as I say, to communities and indeed to industries across our state. Given more students attend TAFE than our universities, and TAFE is crucial to Australia's vet system, there are serious concerns here about the future of accessible pathways into either education, career transition, or indeed ensuring we have quality skills within this state. That's why I moved this motion today, and that's why the Greens moved this same motion across state parliaments today. We are calling on all state governments to guarantee the funding for a public TAFE system, and we are calling on all state governments to end the current competitive tendering model of government vocational education and training. I have listened with interest to the Minister's lack of response to questions raised in this place on course closures, campus closures and potential closures, and indeed cuts across the board. This government seems to have decided that they have no responsibility or accountability to this parliament on these matters, branding them operational. However, they are more than happy, as the Honourable Stephen Wade interjects, and I certainly concur, they are more than happy to brag about their achievements in this area when it suits them. What I would say is that one particular area of great concern that I'd like to observe, that I would have thought that this Labor Wetherell government would have held in higher regard, is indeed the arts within our TAFE system. The Adelaide College of the Arts, AC Arts, is one of the nation's preeminent centres for arts training. Under the Stronger as One model, with profitability as the key driver, it would seem that there's little chance that the vision seen by the chair of the college's Arts Advisory Board, Ms Robin Archer AO, for this centre to become an arts training centre of excellence. Certainly that is the concern that's been raised in the AEU South Australian branch's submission to the current TAFE inquiry being undertaken federally, and I have to say that I concur. Ms Archer notes that South Australia has long branded itself as the festival state, and that Adelaide has only recently been rebranded as the creative city. She says of AC Arts that it is, and I quote, an institution which screams potential for arts training, end quote. But AC Arts, she said in her March 18th, 2013 Hawke Centre address, has been working under the nationally familiar cloud of being told you cost too much. Its future has continued to remain uncertain because of various shifts and changes in TAFE SA. Just a week or so before the Creative City branding, the new TAFE board, chaired by Mr Peter Vaughan, announce the new shape of One TAFE as it will be in the future. That meeting and that Ms Archer referred to, she goes on to say, was a good meeting, but a meeting in which it has been agreed that indeed the idea that under this new system, such a centre of excellence that we'd like to see at the Adelaide College of Arts, which has been promised not just to TAFE but indeed to South Australia for so many years, and which was indeed some of the continuing motivation for the Arts Advisory Board and those involved in that vision, has been said to be, and I quote from that transcript, will not be possible within this restructure. That's a sad day for South Australia. It's a sad day for a state that continues to call itself a festival state, and indeed for a city that brands itself a creative city. And that's not just a visionary goal. That's not just something that we would like to be just for the hell of it. It's something that we have to be if we are to find our place in a global market where we do not have labour that can be undersold across this globe. We do not have cheap labour that we can sell to the lowest bidder. We have to be creative. We have to find our niche in this global market, and that is why these things are so vital to get right, and that is why this government cannot continue to wash its hands of its responsibility here in ensuring that TAFE is all it could and should be for South Australians. I spoke today at the National TAFE Day event down at the Co-op coffee shop, which I previously mentioned in this place. The Co-op coffee shop hosted a fabulous event that was vibrant in all the best senses of the word and in none of the government-imposed red tape senses of the word. It was community, it was grassroots, it was energetic, and it was optimistic. They had very little to be optimistic about under this current regime. However, they're going to continue to fight for what they know is right, and that is the role that TAFE gives in changing lives, in transforming lives, in giving people that first, second, third chance, in ensuring that people are able to get the skills that they need, not just for their own personal development, but indeed for what our community and our economy need, and indeed to place ourselves in the best position possible. I think that many South Australians would be concerned to know that the direction that this government has had and the attitude that this government has had with a minister who refuses to answer operational questions on TAFE SA. I think most South Australians would expect accountability from their government in this area, and with that I look forward not only to a renewed interest in TAFE, but indeed a renewed approach to TAFE, and and a moment for the government to perhaps take this motion as an opportunity to pause and reflect on their direction. With that, I commend the motion to the council.
Mr. Gazzola, take the